Hello, I'm Robert Jones, your host for Powerhouse Podcast. And on the show today is Pastor Elaine, and we are going to be talking about a topic, identity abuse. Who does it affect? What does it do? How to overcome it? And how that you can be someone that could be suffering and not even know it. Stay tuned to learn more.
Welcome to the Powerhouse Podcast, presented to you by SAC Life TV. Here's your host, Pastor Robert Jones.
Hello, I'm Robert Jones, your host for Powerhouse Podcast.
And I'm Joanne Johnson, your co-host.
We are blessed today to have Pastor Elaine with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Identity abuse. Can you talk about that?
Identity abuse is really a damage of your self-perception. And your identity, typically when we talk about identity, people think about their self-perception. And your self-perception can be damaged in so many ways. And there was a time I asked God, why do so many people over-identify with the most negative thing about them? And the words that I heard were identity abuse.
Wow. Well, and there is a scripture in the Bible, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? Mm-hmm. And so it does have a controlling part of, or could have a controlling part. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your beginnings and what led you to the point you're at today. Just share with us.
Thank you. So I tell people my story is a little rough. It starts rough, but it ends really well. So when I was about 8 years old, I was adopted as a baby. And when I was about 8 years old, my mom called me into the living room. And so dutifully, I thought, I had a chore to do or was in trouble for something. And I walked down the hallway. And when I got there, I could see my dad on the couch behind the newspaper. My mom was standing there. She turns and she looks at me and she says, "Your brother says that your dad's been doing stuff to you. Is that true?" And I kind of freaked out. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to lie to my parents. And he's sitting right there. And I didn't know what to do. And so I just said, yes. And she turned and she looked at my dad and she said, "Is that true?" And he said, "I don't know what she's talking about." And he never looked up from the newspaper. And nothing ever changed. And so when you're lied about or lied to, you start believing lies about yourself, and it can really jack you up. And it really jacked me up. And I was hospitalized 5 times in 1 year for depression.
Wow.
Yes. And so I went on to become an ordained pastor. So I jokingly tell people I did what any good jacked up person would do. I became a licensed marriage and family therapist and an ordained pastor. And 11 years of college and 13 years of my own therapy. And I figured, I really honestly believed I could help anybody because of all of my own experiences and everything. And like I said, I got frustrated because I had so many clients, they genuinely wanted help. And they were working really hard. And they would come, they would pay, they would do the thing, but they would get stuck. And they would just sit there. And I was frustrated about that. And so I was sitting on my couch thinking, why? Why would anybody over-identify with this one thing? And that's where I heard those 2 words, identity abuse. And I took out the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, for therapists.
Got one in my office. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I looked up that and I thought, from a biblical standpoint, if my identity that God gave me was abused, what would that do to me? And it really explained a whole lot of the emotional disorders that people struggle with. They believe a lie because it feels true. So at some point in time, in a traumatic moment, in a vulnerable moment, they received some information from somebody that they revered or respected in some fashion, and they received it as truth. And that truth feels so real to them that when somebody comes and tells them something that actually is true, it doesn't feel as true as the lie does. Mm-hmm. And they'll reject the truth. And I spent time really looking at, how do I walk somebody from this point of I can't believe what is true to receiving what is true. And so that's really the base of all that I do now, on multiple platforms in various ways.
So you're a pastor, but you've been educated. Tell us about your educational background, because I read it and I was like, wow.
I took the courses for ordination, but then I also have a master's degree in psychology from Sacramento State.
Okay, awesome. So I love psychology, by the way, mm-hmm. and the power behind it. It's amazing. I believe that just understanding how things work. So you have studied this area, you've experienced this area, and now you're ministering to people that are suffering in this area. That's pretty powerful. It's almost, you say people were designed for something. You were like designed. If there's anybody designed for it, it seems like you're the one.
Often they say that the person that you can reach the best is the person you were before your breakthrough.
Right. Like your own identity abuse helped you be able to minister to others in that area.
Yeah, I believe that because of my identity abuse, that I allowed God to use that and go find those, and so I can relate to people on a very, very deep level, and that compassion is a lot of times people will come in and say, I'm just so jacked up, I'll never get any better, or I'll be in therapy forever. And I like saying, you're not as jacked up as you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're really not, because people think they're really jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
When it's really just something that they received, a message they received, and when they really understand, it's just a message I received.
Mm-hmm.
I can unlearn that, and I can relearn what is true. And it takes time, but it can be done.
So every year, my daughter is adamant that I decorate the house for Christmas. And it's like the more lights, the better, right? So she always has these very high expectations for me. And I'm 58 years old. I've been decorating houses for a lot of years. So my fire has kind of gone down with decorating houses, even though I love the holidays and things of that nature. Well, what I find is every Christmas, I am confronted with lights that are in a mess. My first inclination is, I'll just go buy new ones. Because to untangle them takes work. It takes some brain power, because I'm going to have to figure out where the end is, and I'm going to have to be careful and not burst the bulbs. I'm going to have to lay these out on the lawn in a way that in a pattern they're supposed to be, and it's quite the process. And it almost sounds like what you do is you untangle my Christmas lights from an emotional, like in a mind way, because we can. I mean, when I talked to you the first time, I said, wow, I suffered identity abuse, and I didn't even realize I was suffering identity abuse, So from what you do is, it's like you untangle their Christmas lights, if you will, if I can use that metaphor.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And it's true, because they believe there's something broken about them. And that's why they just stop. I'm broken and I can never be fixed. When it's actually somebody told you were broken, or something happened that caused you to believe that you were broken. And you get to choose what you believe about yourself. And just stopping there for a minute and letting them think about that. I get to choose what I believe about myself.
That's powerful.
And I have them go back and say, so this is the process. I ask people to think about the most negative thing they think about themselves consistently. And ask them, when is the very, very first time, as far back as you can remember, thinking that thought? And I kind of walk them through this little process and then say, okay, what do you want to believe about that situation? And what do you want to believe the situation as it occurred? So there was a bully that picked on you, that said, you dressed weird, and so for the rest of your life you were super hyper focused on what you wore. Do you want that boy in 5th grade to still have control over what you wear today? Or do you want to know that you're fine, and his voice really shouldn't have that much power? And I usually insert Jesus into that moment. If Jesus showed up in that moment when that boy's saying that to you, what would he, A, do to the boy, say to the boy? What would he do to you? And what would he believe about you in that moment? And do you want to believe Jesus, or do you want to believe the boy? And it's getting them to get past the emotion of it all and thinking more methodically. And that's the challenge.
The mind is one of those things, right, that we can either get trapped in or freed from. And there is a freedom when you are not entrapped.
Yes.
In lies. There's truly a freedom, and I experience that myself. What leads people to you on this? Is this something that people are just drawn to you? Is it something that you tell us about the process of how people get connected with you in regards to this identity abuse?
Well, can I share about how I got drawn to her?
Yeah.
Because that would be, see, right? Okay, so I like telling this story. We met in Walmart at the tire center, and I was reading my book, hoping not to engage with anybody, right? So she's seeing this book that I'm reading, and she...
It was like Joyce Meyer.
Something, about women in ministry or something like that, right? And you ask if you can tell me the story of, or my story, or the story of the day God made me.
Yes.
And I was like, sure, okay, but then after you told me the story, I was like, oh wow, like this person's interesting. Like I want to know more. And then when I went home, then I looked you up, and then I just thought it was a divine appointment, really. And then I just got connected with her because of her message. I looked online at your information, and it really resonated with me that even though, yes, I was active in ministry, there was still this part of me that was like, had to deal with do I belong here? Do I belong in this space? And self-sabotage and all those things, right? And that's what you help with. And so I really liked and appreciated that she came from the therapy side and she came from the God side and married them both together. So I'm like, this is a unique ministry that Pastor Elaine has.
Yeah, and I do. I tell that story to just about anybody, anywhere. But it's helpful when I see them doing something that's biblical, because then I can approach them and know that they're going to receive it well. But I've told it to homeless people and all sorts of stuff, and just speaking life into somebody. And I think that what I've learned is that most Christian leaders struggle with self-doubt about being in positions of leadership, and even people in non-spiritual leadership have that struggle. And being able to say, I have a process to help you out of that. That doesn't have to be the norm. So many people receive that and they're in leadership and they're like, I shouldn't be here, or I'm inadequate, or somebody else should be doing this, I'm not educated. I mean, it goes on and on. And to be able to say, you're here for such a time as this, you've been given something for such a time as this, and to teach them how to look beyond themselves to the person that's going to receive their message, and gift them with that. And see it from that perspective rather than, am I doing it right and saying it right and all that kind of stuff. And it dynamically sets them free, as you said. Yes.
Because I'm a pastor, I really look at the whole picture, right? And it's like, I've seen it even in people in our church where they have something that they feel they should do, a calling of some sort, to lead one type of ministry or another, to do some kind of outreach, whatever it may be. I always get the same answer when they approach me as, I just don't know how, or I've just never done it, or it's always an inadequacy in self that leads them not to do it. But when they drop that feeling of inadequacy, then they actually do it. So self was the very reason, or is the reason, that prevents them. And so now that's in a church setting. So do you run into that from let's say a corporate standpoint, or do you run on that from just an everyday, I don't care if you're a housewife standpoint, you can feel inadequate, right? So do you run in that? I run into it in the spiritual setting, but do you run into that in other settings and see how it affects not just stepping into that type of leadership, but other types of leadership? And if so, tell us a little bit about that.
I notice it across the spectrum of society, and it almost doesn't matter what you're doing or who you are. You'll have some sort of inadequacy that just bugs you and inhibits you in some fashion. And I think the most fun time I had was I was driving across the US, and there was a big motorcycle rally that was happening in South Dakota, and I was going the other way. So I was stopping and looking at all these little places, and these guys came up and they said, "Oh, you want me to take your picture?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I said, I'm a pastor. No, I said, "Why don't you?" I said, "I'm a pastor." I said something about being a pastor, and they said, "Oh, well, let's take a picture with you, and that'll make a really good story." And I said, "Sure." And he walked away. I said, No. You volunteered. Come back here." So I got this picture of these big biker dudes. They're all sunburned and everything. And one of them took the picture. And he was handing me back the phone. And he says, "Are you really a pastor?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I got saved yesterday." And I said, "Seriously?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Here, I got to tell you a story about the day that God made you." So I told him that story, and he's weeping. He's this biker, and in that moment in time, he's heading to this massive annual biker rally with everybody from around the country with this baby belief. And I got to step into that moment and confirm that and affirm that, Yeah. It's remarkable. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and there's so many people out there that do struggle. I mean, gosh, if you look at depression and anxiety and what causes it and just where we are as a society, there are a lot of I can'ts today. When the word tells us we can do all things through Christ that strengthens us.
And I believe a lot of that has to do with social media. Because there's a constant comparison going on. Constant. Mm-hmm. I mean, every single moment of every day, you can look and see somebody who's bigger, better, brighter, faster than you are.
Yeah.
And it's constantly pouring into people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been talking about this story, and I want our audience to hear the story for themselves and really be able to soak it in. So they may not go on YouTube. So would you be able to take the time and share the story with our audience?
Sure.
You can look into the camera, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'd be happy to do that. So I'll tell you the story of the day that God made Robert. How's that? That work? Okay. So there was a day that the God that we serve, that we love, that made the oceans and the trees and the stars and the flowers and the animals, stopped everything he was doing, and he said, I'm gonna make a Robert. And he thought about you. And he took the cells of your body and he swirled them in his hand, and he thought about the color of your eyes and the color of your hair and the shape of your toes. And he was so excited. He's like, angels, check it out, man. I'm making me a Robert. And they're like, wow, God, you've never made anything like that before. And he said, no, Robert's different. Robert's different than anything I've ever made before. And the way he sees the world and responds to the world is going to be different than anything I've ever made before. And he thought about your favorite food and your favorite color and your favorite animal. And he says, this is good. He says, Robert, I love you. I love you so much. Everything about you matters to me. The things that bring you happiness and joy, but also the things that bring you sorrow and pain, it all matters to me. And Robert, it's my hope for you, as it is for everyone, that when I put you in the world, that you have two parents that tell you every day how much you matter to me, every day. Now, some parents will do their job really well, and other parents not so much, and some parents aren't around, and then sometimes bad people do bad things to good kids. And Robert, the world's going to come along and say, you don't look right, you don't sound right, you don't live here, you don't own this car, you don't drive, you didn't have this education. Every day, thousands of messages will bombard you. And it might get really hard for you to hear my voice and to remember how much you matter to me. But Robert, I want you to know that every moment of every day, I'm right by your side. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, I will never abandon you. And Robert, I also want you to know that I'll never be disappointed in you. I might be disappointed in some things that you say, or some things that you do, or even some things that you think about. But I'll never be disappointed in who you are, because you, Robert, are exactly the way I created you to be. And I am your biggest cheerleader, and I am looking forward to seeing you again someday and welcoming you home and giving you a great big hug. And I hope you remember that every day for the rest of your life.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Mosley Collins for sponsoring Powerhouse Podcast. And if you are in need of any legal help, please dial 916-444-4444. All fours for legal help. Thank you, Mosley, for your support.
SAC Live TV is proud to sponsor the Powerhouse Podcast with Pastor Robert Jones. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us at info@saclife.tv.
Are you looking for substance in your podcast? Look no further. Introducing the Powerhouse Podcast. Join us every week as we delve into politics, religion, entertainment, and education. Don't miss out. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and be part of the Powerhouse Podcast community. For more information, visit our website, powerhousepodcast.net.
Hello and welcome back to Powerhouse Podcast. We have Pastor Elaine on today, and we're talking about identity abuse. And on the last segment, she just plugged my name in as God created me, and had to break in tears. So I just, after you heard that, I encourage you to plug your name in there, because God feels the same about you. He really does. So the journey to get you to this revelation because it is a revelation. That's revelatory. Can you tell us like defining moments, things that happened, fell into place, however you want to describe it, that led you to this kind of revelation and this type of ministry that personally I think, and I'll be honest with you, I always tell people this all the time, Pastor, as I say, you just don't know who you are yet. You just don't know who you are yet. And that's part of that, not knowing their identity. So can you tell us a little bit about what led you to that, the defining moments, the revelation moments, anything that you want to share? Is the floor is open.
When God originally said those two words to me, they just kind of floated through my brain, and I would have never put those two words together. So I always tell people those are God's words, because the first time I spoke about it and told that story about my dad on the couch, I was in a speaking competition, believe it or not, in this room of 200 Christian entrepreneurs. And as soon as I said the words identity abuse, you could hear people in the crowd go, and they immediately they understood my identity's been abused. And after that little competition, we had a dinner, and I had a nonstop line of people coming up to me wanting to tell me their stories of identity abuse. And later on, I ran into somebody who was at that event. She goes, "Oh, you're the identity woman, aren't you?" And I thought, I need to share it more. Those two words resonate so deeply with people. Mm-hmm. And I made the little course, and I did it at the church that I was on staff at the time in person. And the breakthrough that people were getting of just being able to say, this is how I see myself, but this is how God sees me. And knowing that this is the journey that we're on, to go from here to this, and seeing them come through breakthrough. I did it one time for kids who were going through divorce. And I had like 7-year-olds and 11-year-olds, and I had a client who was 21, and she goes, "I want to come." And I'm like, they're just mostly kids. She goes, "No, I want to come." And I got them all in the room, and I started going through this process, and you could tell this little light went on, and they're looking around and they're saying, we all can't be the reason why our parents divorced, because that's the most common thought children have, is that they're the fault. And so just watching them coming to realizing that they themselves are believing a lie and being able to let that go. And the more I saw that it was helpful, I thought, how do I get more people to see this? So I was in a very rural location, and I happened across somebody who was a life coach who happened to be a Christian, and I started watching their things, and I thought, well, this might be a way that I can actually go into the bigger world and do it. So now I have that same course that I do. It's like in an evergreen, you can do it yourself kind of thing. And then also a group where you can do it with other people, and we meet by Zoom and walk through the process together.
Awesome. So do you find that a lot of people that are still in identity abuse don't recognize it?
Yes.
So
yes.
They don't even recognize it.
The biggest issue of identity abuse is the inability to believe truth, even in light of concrete proof. Because somebody can come up to you and say, "Wow, you look fantastic today." And in your head, you're like going, well, and you think of all these negative things about, and you can't believe what they said. You can't receive the truth. And that is the biggest issue. So even trying to get people into the program is hard, because they believe they're so broken that they can never change. It is who they are. They are broken. And helping people understand that is something that I always say, somebody gave you a bad gift, and you can learn to give it back. You don't have to receive that and keep that forever. And we can identify that and work through that. So the challenge, again, is going from getting them out of their emotional state into the analytical state and saying, let's think this through from a critical thinking perspective. Then they can usually make that shift of being able to say, okay, I'm emotionally attached to this thought about myself, but I want to be intelligently attached to what God says is true about me.
And you talk about like 3 different areas, like where sources that identity abuse can come from, like meaning like it can come from traumatic events. You'll have to fill in the rest, like
yeah. So there's just somebody bold-facedly calling you something, right? So that's what I call identity abuse. Somebody just looking at you and saying you're stupid or whatever, or parents who say, "Oh, they're a brat" to their kids.
I hate that.
I know. It's like, please stop and take that back. Exactly. But then trauma, so rape, war, those kind of things that just dramatically shift what your perspective of life is. And then there's perception, which is, and what the example that I use is that if you have a single child and then you have a baby, and the older child was doted on by everybody, first child in the family, all the grandparents, everybody, the new baby comes along. The perception is I'm not as important anymore as the new baby. So they may not even be aware that they're receiving this message, but they live with that and they grow into that inadequacy for the rest of their life. And yes, there's two more and I can't think of it.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you the entrapment we can fall into with the mind. I mean, I've had people
Right.
say, I think it was not long ago, someone said, "Oh, you've lost weight." And I've lost some weight. And they said, "Oh, you've lost weight, you're looking good." And I go, "Yeah, I got so much more to go." Like, I couldn't just accept a compliment because I still know, in my mind, I'm still overweight. So I couldn't accept it as, and then when I started talking to you, I was like, am I abusing myself? Is this self-abuse? Be nice to the self, But in all sincerity, it's like if you think something that is not positive toward yourself, you can, as you use the word, self-sabotage, and you can.
The challenge that I find is that most people in Christendom think, just stop thinking that. Just stop that.
Yeah.
And they'll go to people and say, why do they think? Just stop thinking that. And it sounds easy, but it's a process. And I tell people, there's a feeling like physiologically your body believes I'm overweight, I'm fat. Like physiologically, I believe that I'm fat. And so it doesn't matter whether I'm lost some, it says I'm fat. Because this has become your identity, right? And to be able to say, oh, just stop thinking that. It doesn't work. You have to say, okay, where did those messages come from? And why do you believe it that deeply?
Because they're rooted, and you have to uproot those thoughts and those beliefs.
Right.
Well, my thoughts come from the mirrors in our house. So,
they make those mirrors that kind of do that.
I need those kind of mirrors. We have those wardrobe mirrors in our closets. And my wife goes, "Why did you put those?" I said, "Well, I thought it'd make the room look bigger." She goes, "It makes everything look bigger, honey." I'm like, "I know, I regret it, No, but this is something that I think is, and you're right, in Christendom it does. People do go, "Oh, you know Jesus now. You don't, you're a new creature in Christ," and go on. And there's a lot of untangling of the Christmas lights that has to happen for people to actually get to that point. And it's work. It's work. And a lot of people don't, and that I've encountered, they don't know how to work their way out of it.
Exactly.
They just see the tangled mess and go, "Oh, forget it. It is what it is," right? What do you do with those people? Do you give them a process, a kind of a step-by-step process, or is that something that it's more of a time thing, depending upon individual? Some takes more, some takes less. How do you approach that? And then do you encounter that, and what's your reaction to it?
Yes, maybe no.
Sorry, I should like four questions.
So there's people will come to me in a variety of belief states about themselves, and they genuinely won't contact me unless they really want to be better. They may not believe they can be better, but they really want to be better. And what I try to let people know is that deep down inside, there is a you that's trying to prove yourself. That's the you that needs to be the normal you. That's the good you, the happy you, the you that can just enjoy life. And you're trying to prove to people that I'm kind and I'm loving. And because you believe these other things about yourself, there's that barrier. It's like learning how to get rid of that barrier of belief. That's more of a cultural thing. And I take everybody through the exact same process. We use biblical understandings of what God says is true, and then what is the divergence between who you project yourself as versus who you really are. And we sit as a group, we put little numbers, 0 to 100. How much are you really who you make yourself look to be? And then we talk about why, and then we talk about the different scenarios in a normal week that would cause you to feel better about yourself or worse about yourself. And this can be for anybody all the time, but the challenge is, do I let my emotions dictate my identity or my behavior? Or do I let the truth dictate my identity? We're all going to come into situations that bother us and make us feel insecure and this kind of stuff, but is it going to dictate the future of my identity. And everybody goes, and like you said, some people it takes longer and some people it's shorter. And that really kind of depends on the severity of the situation.
So do you find that it's almost like a reconditioning that has to happen? Because, I mean, depending upon the person, this kind of negative or improper identity abuse, it could take place over weeks, months, years of conditioning, right? I have a horrible habit. Horrible. If I do something that doesn't meet my standard, I'm like, you're an idiot. I'll tell myself, you're an idiot. And recently I started saying, no, I'm not.
Good.
No, I'm not. And it's I don't care if I'm playing golf and I hit a bad shot. I started saying, I hit a bad shot and I go, well, I tried.
Good. Good.
And I've been playing actually better golf
Nice.
because I don't get in that negative space of I hit a bad shot, I criticize myself and I beat myself up. Now I'm just like, I'm having fun. It doesn't matter. And it's really a different, but it feels so like touchy-feely, like that's not who I am. But yet I need to be that.
Right. But
To
what
break
if that is who you are? What if that really is who you are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's been interesting. It's been because now I'm like all aware of this identity abuse. And so now I'm always aware of what people say, what I think. Does that line up? So it's like broad awareness, even though I wouldn't say I suffer from identity abuse. I think I do at times. It tries to like pull me back, And so once you have that revelation of who you are, the battle's not over, is it?
No, no. The enemy uses emotion. Think about it. Anytime you're tempted to do anything, it's emotional.
Very true.
And so he will find the one place that you're weakest and just poke. And if he can get you thinking about something that, so I have a rule in my course that you can't say stupid or dumb. You can identify with that. Like and I make him take it back. It's like if you say, "Oh man, I was so stupid today," and it's like, wait, take that back, because you're saying I am stupid. But it's like I did something stupid.
Made a bad decision.
Yeah, right. And I tell people, I said, we're just going to give it a go, and if it doesn't work, we won't do it again.
Yeah. My wife always did this with our kids. And she would say, that was a bad decision. She never called him a bad kid. She'd say that was a bad or a poor decision. That was a bad decision. You're better than that, And so it really, I never will forget my daughter, Larkin. She was just like 3, I think, or something like that. And my mother was watching her. And my mother is like in the house, but she's probably cleaning something because she can't just sit still, right? And so my daughter gets the crayons and decides to go down her hall, and she's doing all these circles with these crayons. She like colors our entire hall, right? So my wife gets home, and I get home roughly the same time, and we see the wall almost like simultaneously. She brings my daughter and she goes, "Larkin Faith, look at this. This was a bad decision." And my daughter dropped her head, and then she made her get a rag and start cleaning it as a 3-year-old. She was going to clean it right here, But it really hit me. Like, she never called her bad. She was upset about the decision, and it really spoke to me. It really spoke to me like, okay, because I wasn't raised that way. I was called names, by my stepdad. I was called names. And so those names stuck with me. I can still hear his voice calling me those names. You know what I mean? Which kind of connects to me calling myself stupid, right? Or So when you have someone in that area, are there any kind of like processes, activities, even awareness drills or whatever that you give them to say, hey, you got to stop the avalanche? You got to stop it before it begins an avalanche. Is there something that you do?
The first thing is really the awareness issue, right? When you got to be aware of it, then you started checking yourself. And I always say you can't heal something you're not aware of.
Amen to that.
And so it's really and that's where the exercise of going over your day and saying, when did I feel good about myself? When did I not feel good about myself? What were the circumstances? How did I feel? And just starting to be aware of your surroundings and what your feelings are doing in those moments slows the train down a little bit. And then you can start identifying what are the thoughts around those negative situations that are attached to that. But it takes a journey of awareness before you can say, oh, so I always tell people you'll have a physiological response to something when it's an attack. And you need to learn to recognize in your body, where does that happen? And then you'll say, oh, there's that feeling again. This is usually what I think when I have that feeling. Do I want to think that again about myself? Yeah. But that takes awareness and time. Yeah.
It does. Awareness is key.
I think just even being aware that identity abuse is a thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And when I first learned about this from you, I brought it back to my youth. I was like, you guys, guess what I learned, right? So this is just so important because they're in their formative years and they're dealing with social pressure and all that kind of stuff as a teen. And it's just like, if you can help them solidify who they are in Christ. Now, that's like my passion. Like, do you know who you are in Christ? Like, you are just powerful, And being able just to drill that into them from a young age, then yes, we're gonna still continue to deal with stuff as adults, but you don't have to go through torment, right? Mm-hmm. So
that you're giving them the tools to be able to say, this. You have an option.
Right.
Do I want to believe this about myself or this about myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, this is so good. I love this. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back. So come right back, and we will continue on with Pastor Elaine in identity abuse. See you soon. We would like to thank Mosley Collins for sponsoring Powerhouse Podcast. And if you are in need of any legal help, please dial 916-444-4444. All fours for legal help. Thank you, Mosley, for your support.
Sac Live TV is proud to sponsor the Powerhouse Podcast with Pastor Robert Jones. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us at info@saclife.tv.
Are you looking for substance in your podcast? Look no further. Introducing the Powerhouse Podcast. Join us every week as we delve into politics, religion, entertainment, and education. Don't miss out. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and be part of the Powerhouse Podcast community. For more information, visit our website, powerhousepodcast.net.
Hello, and welcome back to Powerhouse Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Jones, and we are here with Pastor Elaine. We also want to thank Mosley Collins. Thank you so much for your sponsorship, Mr. Collins. And if you need legal help, 916, all fours for legal help. So we're talking about identity abuse. And Joanne, you brought up a really good question during break.
Yes.
I'd like you to continue that.
My question, Pastor Elaine, was how does your work with identity abuse influence your pastorship?
That's a really great question. And I really genuinely believe that it helps me understand my people better. I've been gifted by God to see people when they're healed. So I had 20 years of people coming into my office messed up. And when they came through the door, I saw them as complete and healed. And my responsibility was to journey them through to that place. Mm-hmm. So being in a senior pastor position and being able to look at my people as individuals and seeing where their hurts are, but then being able to invite them into wholeness and invite them into healing and really genuinely treat them as though they're 100% healed. And I think that this has really helped me with that, definitely.
That's awesome. Now, I know you're doing a lot of things, and you have a website, correct?
Yes.
What is that website? Share it with us.
So I need to preempt this with I have a fishing addiction. I'm actually I'm in a Bassmasters club, and I was 5th for Angler of the Year last year.
Like a serious.
Yeah, I'm a serious angler. Yes, and so my website is fishing4truth. fishing4truth.com.
All right.
Yes.
Fishing4truth.com.
fishing4truth.com.
And that's like FISHING.
Yes, the number 4 truth.
Okay, good. And so you have a website. It probably contains. Now, do you have curriculum that people can go through, or you lead them through?
Yes. So if you're a do-it-yourself type of person, on the website there's a resources page, and you can go there and find their a course. There's actually 2 of them on there that you can go and click on and purchase, and it has all the same videos and content that I do one-on-one or in the groups that I do.
Okay. So you do one-on-one as well as groups?
Yes. I only take 5 one-on-ones at a time because I want to make sure that I give them good attention. And the groups are actually more fun because,
So now the groups, are they online groups or in-person groups or both?
No, they're only online.
Okay.
They're only online because I do travel and I do speaking a lot, and so I can do them from my hotel room or on the road or whatever, and
that's good.
and also because then people from across the nation. I have a gentleman from the UK and I have a woman from Australia, and we all meet together on Zoom and walk through this journey together. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, how long is the course?
The formal course is 6 months. And I believe somewhere, I always tell people it has to be 6 months. You have to pay me for 6 months, because somewhere around the 4th month, you're going to go, oh, this isn't working. But at the 5th month, you're like, I would have done that in this situation, and now I did this. And so that's that point of you've received and ingested enough of the information to be able to watch it come to play in your own life. Yeah.
So this master class that you provide, I was a part of it, and I enjoyed it because I was among women who were in ministry that were doing the thing, right, but still had this kind of voice like, am I supposed to be in this space, and how do I operate at a higher level, right, and not having these like thoughts trying to hold you back. So I enjoyed being able to learn from the other pastors, ministers, just whatever they were doing in ministry, and just listening to their struggles and overcoming their own self-limitation. And I also enjoyed being able to practice, right? You offer opportunities to practice what we're learning.
Yes.
And so you'll just give different exercises and how to go online, how to hold a Zoom, and how to do your Scooby-Doo. And so just being able to...
What is a Scooby-Doo?
So we do some speaking techniques. And one of the techniques that I had learned some time back is that if you want people to get close in and focus, you do the Scooby-Doo, and you say, you want to hear something really important? Let me tell you. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But you do this kind of little headway. But it's basically looking at, is anybody else listening? And then you lean in. So it's a speaking technique. And so I do cover some speaking techniques because I took some speaker training, and with all of my experience speaking, most of the women, when they came into the program, I would ask them, if you were freed from all self-doubt, what would be different about you? And invariably, they would say, I would speak up for myself more. And I thought, well, now that they're getting healthy, let's give them some speaker tools as well. And then we also go into ministry mapping and mission and vision statements, and then all the tech and stuff. And that's kind of like the bonus at the back end of, once you're healthy, I'll help your ministry grow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you, because I would always tell this one here, Miss Joanne, hey, you should do this, and hey, you should do that. She said,
I was a queen of no.
I'm not that person. I don't do those things. And then now she's like, I got this. So it's created definitely boldness in her, and a willingness, and now I don't have to pull her near as hard. I just give her a little tuck, and she's like runs with it. Good. But I love this. I think it's such a necessity, not just in the body of Christ, but people in general. I mean, I think if you don't know Christ, you need to know this. You need to know that, you're not always the lies that you hear.
Right.
But you're in the creation of God himself.
Do you have any other resources available?
Yes, I actually, what we have right here is a book that I wrote that is 17 years of therapy in a book. So I tell people, for $20, you can get 17 years of therapy, or you can pay me $200 an hour. And what I did was I genuinely had to say the same thing over and over and over to everybody that came into my office. So the very first thing says, anger covers pain. So when they came in, I had to teach everybody the same thing. And I thought, what if I take all of that and put it in a book so that it's easier to consume? And so it's not something that you're going to go and say, hey, I'm going to go back and read this book and relax and drink a cup of coffee. I mean, it's work. I mean, it's genuinely work. But it's got biblical concepts in there. It talks about your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, and your relationship with God. and it has journal markings in there and questions for every 2 to 3 pages has questions that you can apply it to your life today. And I also have it in Spanish. It's on an ebook. I give the Spanish version away because it's an ebook anytime anybody asks for it. And so, yeah, it's a really great resource.
I like that. This is called Jesus is In.
Yes.
I like that title.
Yeah, because he's always in. Like he's always available. He's never gonna turn that around and say, "Oh, now I'm closed." You can't. Yeah.
I want to thank you for being on today. It's been amazing having you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Listen, if you want to learn more, we're going to have the different website. You heard it is fishing4truth.com. Feel free to visit there and check out the material she has and contact her and understand who you really are and don't believe those lies. Thank you for tuning in to Powerhouse Podcast. We look forward to next time we see you. And until then, God bless and we'll see you later.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us in our mission to engage in deep conversations that impact mindsets and create a practice of introspection. Do you have an idea or a topic for a show? Message us at php@saclife.tv. Remember, your voice matters, and together we have the power to influence positive change in our world.